Hello, hello, hello. Happy Sunday. Happy September 15th. Is it the 15th? I don't even know what. Yes, it is the 15th. Happy September 15th. September just started, and here we are 15 days into this month. My name is Coach Yolanda. I'm an international spiritual life coach, certified birth doula, meditation maven, so many different things. But I am absolutely privileged and honored to be here once again. This is Mama Meditations, where every Sunday at 1:30 Eastern Standard Time on YouTube, we come together, we meditate, but not in a traditional sense. We meditate in the way that maybe your mama would if she was meditating off topic, because mothers love to go off topic. Oftentimes it's a rant because mothers love to rant, particularly when they are passionate about something. And I am grateful that I am passionate about restoring our power. We are committed to doing that the entire 2024 year. And I'm grateful. Oh, thank you. Oh, my goodness. I feel radiant. Dare I say that this morning I woke up feeling better than I have in quite some time, and I am excited about so many different things that are happening. I'm excited that it's still summer. I am a summer girl, and all of these little hints of the fall season coming in oftentimes can create a depressive state for me. Leaves are falling, the weather is changing, it's darker in the morning, we don't get as much sunlight during the day. All of those kind of things tend to have me start to shrink. And I said, what if we tried something new? What if we, transitioned into fall in a way that feels easy and welcoming. And the way that I'm choosing to do that is by still acknowledging where we are in the present, by not trying to push myself too far forward. It is still summer. And so I am celebrating summer. Listen, I've been waiting all summer to wear this dress, haven't worn this dress. So I said, put the dress on today. So I'm probably only going to have it on for a couple of hours. One of the other things that I plan on doing to still celebrate summer is to do some yard work, go play in some dirt, sit outside. I haven't been doing those types of things. So it's still summer for me. Wherever you are, I hope that you are in the moment and not thinking about what's coming, what's happening down the line. Just stay right where you are and appreciate where you are. So last week we talked about community, we talked about connection, we talked about creating spaces for ourselves that feel loving and safe. Today we're going to talk about support. Now, you may remember that 2 weeks ago, we talked about resources and how we are our own natural resource. We are the greatest resource that we could ever connect to, but also that there are resources available to us that sometimes we don't avail ourselves to for a variety of reasons. Today, we're talking about support, and I want to make the distinction between support and resources. I had to make that distinction for myself because, as a severely independent person, I look at anything outside of myself as help. And I don't even like to use that word as much as I used to because I know how it feels for me. Happy Sunday. How are you, love? For me, anything that looks like I have to ask someone else or get help outside of myself feels foreign. And that does not mean that I haven't had support. That does not mean that I haven't had to access resources. But I recognize for me that there's this thing that happens when recognize that there's something that I don't know or something that I need. I recognize and I will acknowledge that there are pieces of me that start to shrink or feel poorly about myself. The commentary might even be, you should know that. Or how come you couldn't figure that out? Or that was so simple. Sometimes that's the commentary because I believe I'm supposed to know everything. I can do everything um, by myself. I was raised by two very independent people who I believe raised me to be severely independent. I was also raised by two people who would break their neck to help others and not necessarily look for the same in return. And it is an admirable trait to have, to want to support and help others. And I know Marissa just did a conversation, just had a conversation about people pleasing. Go and watch that on Marissa's YouTube channel, because I think the disease to please is a disease that many of us suffer from. And there are a variety of reasons why, but it absolutely can be a disease if it is impacting you greatly and you won't acknowledge it. For many of us, it's a disease that we don't even acknowledge. I recognized this yesterday. As a matter of fact, Friday. This was a very labor intensive week in terms of me supporting other people. And I recognized that the after effects of that is that I wanted to shut down and isolate, and I didn't want to talk to anyone. And so here's what happens for me, and it may be similar for you. I don't mind helping people, particularly if I know how to do something because I like a challenge. Um, but I recognize that because of my lack of boundaries, sometimes I can be the go-to for many people, and my job requires it. Like, you can't be in a position where people have to come to you for particular things and then be upset that people are coming to you. So I recognize and acknowledge that. But I also recognize that when it's out of balance, when the labor of helping other people has been so intensive that I feel like I need time for myself, what happens is the people in my personal life don't know that. They don't know, or they can't see that I've been spending so much time giving, 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 and now I don't have anything left to give them. And then it boxes them out. I know you know what I mean about asking for help. Yes, the disease to please can lead to burnout when it comes to what do I have for myself and what do I have for others. And oftentimes, the people in our personal life are affected by our disease to please everyone else out in our professional life. Whether it's you are an entrepreneur or you work for someone or a combination of the two, if you have that conscious or unconscious desire to meet the needs of everyone else, it can impact you greatly in your personal life because then you feel like I don't have anything left to give. And oftentimes, the people in our personal life um, become a byproduct of our burnout, and we don't recognize that either. And so, what we've been talking about all year is finding the balance. What we've been talking about all year is how do I restore my power? Part of you restoring your power is recognizing that you too, Yolanda, also need support. You also need to embed things in your life that support you in such a way that you can maintain a certain level of functionality. I didn't recognize that I didn't have that until I was almost burnt out. I was almost burnt out. I want to think of the year that was, it probably was more than 1 year, but definitely 2016. I believe that was the year that I developed an ulcer. I believe that was the year that I recognized that I was working in the healthcare system. And the woman that had my job before me, I didn't know this until much later, the woman that had my job before me passed away because she was working too much. She was only 41 years old and could have possibly passed away on the job, but she managed to make it home and passed away. So 2016, I was like, that's it for Yolanda. I'm going that way. I can feel it. I'm coming home. I've got upset stomach. My mood is rude, because I was in a position where I was not just doing my work, I'm doing the work of other people and in other departments. It was a lot. But that has been a common thread in my life. Being hired for one job, and they find out, as my daughter says, stop letting people know you know how to do stuff. And once they find out what your skill level is, it's like, oh, would you mind doing this? Would you mind doing that? And because of that disease to please, of course, yeah, I'll do that, even though I'm not going to get paid additionally for it. I'm not going to be compensated for it, but there's something that was in within me that made me feel like doing more was more pleasing to me and to others. Thank God I've been delivered from that, but there's still some healing to be done in terms of asking for support, seeking out resources. But I recognize that anytime something exceeds my capabilities, I start to feel bad about me. I'm like, oh, what's wrong with you? You don't know that. And I have a sinking suspicion that people who have managed to live their lives by always having support must feel great. Like I just have this sinking suspicion that people who don't even have to ask for help, it's like people will trip over themselves to help them. They could just look like a damsel in distress and everybody is running to their rescue. I don't know what that looks like, but I imagine it must be a peaceful existence. Um, but I'm willing to see some of that life, as many have said they want to live their soft life era. I don't necessarily want to live a soft life. I want to live a balanced life because I know who I am. I do enjoy helping other people. I like challenges. I like figuring things out. And I am learning and healing the parts of me that would also like to know what it feels like to be supported. That does not mean that I have not been supported. I'm supported on this channel every Sunday and beyond, and it blows me away. And I'm willing to admit that there are still parts of me that are uncomfortable with it because I immediately think, what's my responsibility? If people are supporting me, what's my responsibility? That is a core belief that I have carried throughout my life that I am interested and invested in healing. Because relationship with other people, interactions with other people shouldn't automatically bring up a scoreboard in your head where you're keeping track of who did what and now you got to do this and what is my responsibility and what is their responsibility. We should not be designed that way. However, for those of us who have been raised with a Western mindset, and when I say Western, I mean the Western part of the world, um, not necessarily limited to the United States, because I believe that there are other cultures where helping and supporting and that disease to please run rampant. And God forbid if were not only raised with a particular mindset that you are here to serve and a level of guilt if you are not doing it. I don't know about y'all, but I can remember interactions from my childhood where I was made to feel guilty if I didn't do and give of myself way beyond my capabilities. I'm a kid, and even I can recognize, well, I'm a kid. Why are you asking me to do something that's beyond my capabilities? And not necessarily, something that I was being taught to do, something that I was expected to do. Because for many of us, yes, Marissa, we live in a transactional society. And so we immediately start to think, if you do this for me, then what do I do for you? And can I meet that responsibility? Can I measure up? And that is a very sickening way to exist, because you're always going to be thinking, what's required of me? What do I got to do? What do I got to do? Instead of who do I get to be, it's what do I got to do? What's my value? What am I here to give? But when you have been raised in a society where everyone is communal, there is community, and there's the recognition that if I am well, then you are well. But if you are unwell, I am unwell, and we will figure things out together. When you're raised in that type of environment, I don't believe that the level of guilt exists, because it just becomes natural instead of a transactional thing. And so I'm going to read from one of my favorite books about why it might be so difficult for those of us who live in and still exist under the parameters of a transactional model. Community is a term that is so familiar to people in the West and yet so hard to achieve. Constantly on the move from city to city, often separated from one's family by geographical distance, and commonly losing primary relationships, such as marriage, to the ravages of separation. Westerners often find themselves relying solely upon themselves, their distraction of choice. I like that term, distraction of choice, or their therapist to manage the crises of daily living. So many of us right now are having crises of daily living. I mean, just the day to day living feels so heavy. Meanwhile, their psyches crave belonging in a community with others where they know they will find healing once and for all. Mm. For many individuals, it also feels as though, and it's often true, I can't be who I truly am in community because the community wants me to be something else. How many messages do we get about what we're supposed to look like, what we're supposed to sound like, how much money we're supposed to have, what kind of house we're supposed to be in, what kind of car we're supposed to drive, how much we're supposed to weigh, how many children we're supposed to have, or whether we're not supposed to have children or not, whether we're supposed to be with, how many messages do we receive on a daily basis about what it means to be human? And who gets to decide? I'm still trying to figure out who is the community of or the council of human activities that tells us. Ooh, I just had a thought. Oftentimes it's religious institutions, but there are other institutions that love to tell us who we are, how we're supposed to be, how we're supposed to operate. And if you do not meet those standards, then you don't belong. And if you don't belong, then you find yourself isolated. And if you find yourself isolated, you can start to tell yourself, it's peaceful here because no one is requiring me to be what they want me to be. No one is constantly telling me that I'm not living up to a particular standard. No one is constantly telling me that my hair isn't right, or my face isn't right, or my skin isn't right, or my weight isn't right. It can feel very peaceful in isolation. However, last week we talked about, and it is something that has been a developing theory for me personally, and also a challenge because I'm struggling with the way that I used to think and the way that I used to be and the way that I desire to be. But being in community is one of the most healing activities that each and every single one of us can belong to and we can do for ourselves. But it is so difficult because of the transactional society that we live in, and because many of us are still trying to figure out who we are. And if you're still trying to figure out who you are and where you belong, you will think there's nowhere that I belong. But wouldn't it be amazing and wonderful and beautiful that as you are figuring out who you are, there is already an accepting community that says you can be who you want on Monday and to be somebody different on Tuesday if that's what your desire is. There are no requirements other than leading with your heart, recognizing that we impact one another with the choices and the decisions that we make, and that we're here to love one another, love ourselves, and figure out how we can create more supportive environments. Now, that goes against the status quo and that old, mindset that says, a self-made person is one to be, upheld and lauded over. But even those self-made people, those self-made success stories, no one is really self-made. We all have to have support. And so, one of the things that I would like to offer to each of us this week is similar to what we did last week in terms of looking at the intimate interactions that we have with one another. Who is part of your community? Who do you consider to be part of your community? Doesn't necessarily mean it's somebody that you live next door to, worship with, work with. But how intimate are those relationships, or are they surface level? Now, I am all for relationships that work, and sometimes they work at the surface level. Sometimes there are individuals where it's like, hey, how are you? How's the family? And that's enough. It's enough. It's enough to be in conversation with them on a surface level. It's not necessary for y'all to, be at each other's houses, brushing each other's hair. You like the fact that you see them, on a regular basis, you check in, hey, how are you? But it is equally as important to have those types of relationships that are more than surface level. The people that know you, the real you, that hold your hand, not just when things are good, but when things are not so good, and still accept and allow you to be who you are in both of those moments. People who are not trying to fix you, people who are not trying to dictate or impress upon you what you should be doing in your life. People who allow you to be who you are. And that's human. Temporary human. People who recognize that you are a spiritual being and treat you and themselves in that manner. If we all saw each other as spiritual beings, how much more respectful would that be, right? Wouldn't it be beautiful? Unconditional love and acceptance. And before we go too far to the extremes, I really would love for everyone to hear this message as it is intended. Um, because one of the other things that I like to do in my spare time is watch documentaries, because I love to learn about human behavior. And when it comes to um, community creation, at its extreme, it becomes a cult. One of my biggest fears in life is to find myself in a cult and I didn't know it. And so there have always been times when I have maybe joined a community and I'm looking out for cult activity. I'm like, because the minute this sounds like a cult, I'm out. I have met with and supported individuals who have been in cults, and the damage that it can do, and the ease in which people find themselves. We're talking about every single one of us who is seeking community. And it can be very, very easy to find yourself in cult or cult like communities. So please be careful that even within your search of finding a sacred community where you can be seen, where you can be heard and loved for who you are, that it doesn't become so dangerous that you give up all of who you truly are because someone else has said this is the only community where you're going to be allowed to be you. There is an individual, when I had TikTok, I no longer have that, but it's a Black woman who actually, I don't know, by now she may have her PhD, but her PhD dissertation, her entire work is on cults and why people join cults and how do we support people in getting out of cults. And there is information, statistics that I don't have available at this moment that cult activity is on the rise because individuals are looking for community. We are so starved by support from other individuals that we are finding ourselves in communities that may be more harm than help. So just be careful. I had to make sure. As a matter of fact, I put that at the top of my notes like, please talk about cult activity and how easy, even if you never leave the sanctity and safety of your home, it is still very easy to get involved in cult like activity. Let's talk about it, Marissa. We haven't even gotten to support for self yet. But yes, there are many workplaces that do operate like cults where people are doing things that are detrimental to their health and being made to feel like if they don't do it, that there's something wrong with them. Absolutely. They have, the phrase that has become synonymous with cults. They have drank the Kool-Aid. There are religious institutions. There are, dare I say, Greek organizations. There are many communal like places where people have to give up a particular part of their identity or assume a new identity just to belong. And I would say particular people of a group that have a particular product that is based in technology kind of operate like a cult sometimes because y'all just be crazy. But even the people that stand in line for sneakers, to me, that's borderline. That is on the borderline. Like, what is it about that thing that would make you participate in behavior that you normally would not participate in? You spending all your money, you getting up at 3 in the morning, you doing particular things just to belong, just to belong, because it is part of the basic human need to belong to community. Just as it says, right here, we want it. We want it. The cry for community is everywhere. Americans have defined themselves in terms of individual freedom. However, it is sometimes the pursuit of that individual freedom that leads us right back into bondage. We working so hard to be free from something that we fall into something that looks like freedom, but could also be something else. So just be mindful as you are developing who you are becoming, that it's not, let me assume this characteristic because these group of people have that and they seem cool and welcoming and loving, and that's what I'm seeking. That's what I want to belong to. Just be careful. So when it comes in terms to support versus resources, and resources, again, we talked about 2 weeks ago. Sometimes resources are something that you seek when you want to do something new, right? It's like, okay, I want to build something and I'm not quite sure how to do that. What's a good resource for me to do that? When there's a new innovation or new technology, many of us have to go seek a resource. I have been very not anti artificial intelligence, but I haven't used it because I feel like I don't want my intelligence to be artificial. I love things to be organic. I love the process of learning how to do something. I love the process of figuring out, how my mind works. I love to see progress. And so if I'm using something else to help me do that, how am I measuring my own progress? How am I seeing where I was to where I am? I love looking back at things I've created, and I might even be critical and be like, what was you doing? Why did you think that was such a good idea? Because I like to see the progress. That does something for me. And it's my belief that with artificial intelligence doing so many things for us, we may lose the ability to see the progress, to see how far we have come. And I think that's also important to your human journey, for you to see the actual journey. And how can you see that if everything else is doing everything for you? It is a great resource. And sometimes it does, benefit us to use it, but be mindful that it's a resource and not a crutch, that it's not replacing your own intelligence and wisdom. Sometimes we need to utilize a resource, um, and it's temporary. We want to educate ourselves on something, so here's a resource in order for us to do that. For me, in the way that I define it, support is ongoing. Just like a foundation of a house, foundation of a building, it needs ample support. If you're going to build a building, if you're going to build a house, it better have a strong foundational support, because that is what is going to determine how long that thing is going to stand up and what is going to happen when a storm comes or some other activity that could cause it to sway or to move. So for me, support is ongoing. It's not just something you look for when things are going bad. It's something that you have within you. Your bones in your body are your support system. If you break a bone or lose, or the bone density in your body starts to deteriorate, like, listen, you're not going to stand up straight like you used to. You're not going to be able to have the same type of support. Your body is not going to have the same type of support. If there is a sway in a bone anywhere in your body, it's going to be felt everywhere. One little bone in your toe being broken can disrupt your whole entire skeletal system. We don't always think about that. If you, God forbid, suffer from back trauma, maybe something happened to, something along your spine, it's going to affect everything. For those of you who have chronic pain, it affects everything. When your support system is affected, everything is affected. So for me, in the way that I define it, support is ongoing. It's part of who I am, part of who you are. Your support system can say a lot about who you believe yourself to be and the person that you are in the world. I think about great support systems. I think about, like, let's take, for instance, Beyonce. Beyonce is not Beyonce because she's Beyonce. She's great and she's wonderful, but she's got an amazing support system. She's got a team. If you've ever watched anything that she's created, at the end, when the end credits are going, it's a whole lot of people who participate in the work. A whole host of people who participate in the work. And it's a beautiful thing. To me, it's a demonstration that if you want to be great, you assemble a team, a support system around you. And so support may not always necessarily be what a resource is. Because to me, hey, Giselle, I'm so glad you're here too. Because for me, a resource, even if it's temporary, it's going to be favorable to me. For instance, if I want to learn how to knit, which is something that I really would like to do, but for whatever reason, every time somebody's tried to teach me, it has not gone well. And that's because for me, any resource that is teaching me how to do something, you better be nice to me. The minute you hurt my feelings, I'm shut down. I don't want to hear it. I don't understand how, like, athletes and sometimes even teachers think that the way to motivate people is to disrespect them, yell at them. Some people will say, "Oh, that's how we create great athletes." Not this girl. If the minute you yell at me, I'm done. I don't want to participate anymore. I don't care how talented I am at it. The minute that kind of negative energy comes into play, I'm done with you. And it has happened in the education system. I never connected with teachers who thought that the way in which they needed to teach their students was to disrespect them, put them down. Um, and I have been in classrooms both as a student and both as an observer where I'm watching the classroom management. I'm like, this is your classroom management style to decimate everyone's self-esteem. This is the way. You think that being a great disciplinarian means that you got to make people feel bad about yourself. Remember months ago and even last year when we were doing inner child work, where we talked about the difference between discipline and punishment. Some people operate from the energy of punishment and they think that that is the way to teach people. And I'm always thinking to myself, please get out of the teaching profession if you think that your job is to just punish people and make people feel bad. There, listen, I'm out. I'm out. And I have sat in many a course where the teacher, and it could be from, some feedback that they've gotten, like they start out with the negativity. And I'm like, let me close my book because I'm not coming back. Number one, I'm not paying for you to talk to me crazy. I don't participate, which is why I have never been able to join any organization where I needed to conform in order to belong. And the people in leadership felt like it was their responsibility to talk down or break you down in order. If I got to be broken down in order for me to join you, I'm not coming. I don't. I'm not joining. And it's not. It doesn't mean that I don't have strength. It means I know who I am. And you're not going to talk to Rose's daughter any kind of way just for me to join or be a part of your community. Oh my goodness, Marissa. One of the podcasts that I like to listen to is called Criminal. It's been around for ages. And there is an episode about not just the indigenous children who were subjected to particular things, but how there is a generation of young people who were stolen from their homes, sold into adoption services, just because other people thought, well, if your family is poor, they don't deserve to have children. Like, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but there was at one particular time, and still is, a particular energy in this country where people thought they knew what was best for other people. And there was an entire, in some of the, and correct me if I'm wrong, some of the child welfare services were built on this principle of the government and other organization knows what's best for your family. So therefore we will step in whenever we feel we want the need to step in to support you. That's a topic for a whole nother day that I'm sure with all of the social workers in this space that we could have a good conversation about how other people thinking they knew what was best for others, particularly minorities in this country. We know what's best for you. So let us come into your family unit. Let's come into your community and destroy it so that it looks like what we think it's supposed to look like. Oh my gosh. I digress. I digress. However, when it comes to resources, they're often favorable. However, when it comes to support, sometimes your support system will challenge you in ways that you haven't been challenged before for a greater good. Now, I can also identify that there were times in my life where there were educators, there were teachers, there were mentors who challenged me, not because they needed to break me down in order to conform, but because they saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. and they challenged me on it. I'm thinking of particular, I had an English teacher in high school, and she was a master at discipline, not punishment, but discipline. She had a certain standard for all of her students, not because it was her standard, but because that's what she believed each and every single one of us could achieve. And if she didn't think that we could achieve it, she wouldn't try so hard for us to get to see it. And she was a master at balancing love and discipline, where there was a level of expectation that she had that challenged us. And to me now, I see that as the support that I needed. Because if we were just left to our own devices, particularly because we were in the 11th and 12th grade, left to our own devices, we wouldn't have done any work. We wouldn't have tried to expand our horizons beyond what was required. She challenged us to not just read the one book we were required to read, but read other works by this author or similar works by this author. And of course there would be someone to say, well, do we have to? And she would say, you need to expand yourselves beyond what even this school district says that you should be capable of doing. And so when it comes to support, sometimes it can challenge you. When you are seeking a resource, seeking to learn something, oftentimes we desire it to be favorable. Because the minute, if I'm paying you or if I'm accessing information and I have a certain level of, understanding, I just need, this as a resource to expand my understanding, and you yelling at me, again, it doesn't serve the purpose. But if I am in an ongoing supportive relationship with someone, they know my heart, they know who I am, they know what I'm capable of, and they say to me, you're not seeing yourself in the greater picture. I'm going to challenge you to do more. I'm going to challenge you to be more. I'm going to challenge you to look at parts of your life that you may not want to look at. Ugh, I feel like we're going to have that conversation. We may have to have that conversation. And do you know that's one of my favorite movies? And God bless the ancestor James Earl Jones, and God bless the ancestor Frankie Beverly. Yeah, we may need to have that conversation. How the field of social work has not always been supportive in the ways in which we would like it to, but also the field of psychology has not. I mean, the medical profession to begin with, we have to look at the foundation to look at where we're at now, right? And thank goodness that there are individuals, such as some of the individuals in this space, who are in the profession and also looking to change the way in which the profession operates. Because not all of the ways in which psychology, the medical community, social work, and so many others, the law enforcement community, let's talk about it. The foundations of many of those organizations did not think about, care about, and were not designed to support communities of color. Listen, y'all gonna make me watch it when we get off. Hey, my love. The soundtrack is amazing. The movie is amazing. Yes, I love one of those movies, but it did touch on how some systems were designed not to support and not as a resource, but actually to divide and conquer. But that's a discussion for another day. But one of the things that we do need to recognize that they did recognize in that movie is that you have to know yourself enough that you know how to activate those systems of support and those systems of resources when it's necessary. And you cannot wait until you're burnt out. And that is why I want to talk about support, because support is ongoing. Support is something that is built into every single thing that you create Every single thing that you do, your healing process, there needs to be a support system because, God forbid, if something should falter or fail, where are you going to go? How are you going to rebuild? One of the things or lessons that we all learned when we were children with three little pigs who built their house, one out of straw, one out of sticks, and then one out of bricks. You build your healing foundation out of sticks, you build your healing foundation out of straw. Something comes along and blows you down. You can't even rebuild from that. You got a bunch of broken sticks and a bunch of straw all over the place. How you going to rebuild from that? But you build your foundation with bricks. Let something come along. Even if it manages to knock it down, those bricks can be recycled and turned into some material that will help you rebuild, more so than the sticks, more so than the straw. And so if you are talking about reconnecting yourself to your power, then you have to integrate a support system. You have to create and integrate a support system. You have to. And that requires you to recognize that it's something that's ongoing. When I talked to you guys the other day or a couple of weeks ago, when I said, you know what, I recognized something was wrong. And so I immediately called and scheduled time with a therapist, which is going great, by the way. I love it. And I'm somewhat upset with myself for coming out of that support system. Um, I know that I was healing from my last experience with a therapist that did not go well, but I recognize that even when things don't go well, doesn't mean you abandon the whole thing. It means you find something that is supportive. And so, even if it's not every 2 weeks, every week, or whatever um, system works for you, having access to therapy and checking in, not just when things are going bad poorly for you, but part of your ongoing daily life. Like this talks about the stress, the crises of daily living. Therapy is something, when done right and when done well, that can become part of your support system. Not the only thing that you rely on, but part of the support system. And so, my offer to you this week is to look at what is part of your support system. Now, on the 29th, we are not going to be in this space together because on the 29th, I'm meeting with my support system, my girlfriends. And I can remember being on a Sunday Live maybe a year ago now, and my girlfriends were coming in. They were coming in the back room and background and talking, and my energy shifted. And I was like, I gotta go, y'all. We haven't gotten together in quite some time. They are part of my support system because I've known these women well over 40 years. They've seen me grow. I've seen them grow. We've supported each other through death, divorce, separations, graduations, grandbabies, all manner of things. We went through puberty together, relationships. I don't think there's anything that we have not gone through together. Um, and they are a part of my support system. And when they get here on the 29th, we're going to have a conversation about why has it taken so long for us to get together. Now we have the group chat where we talk to each other through the group chat, but it has to, for me, at least, I recognize it has to be more than that. And even as we were planning for the 29th, one of my girlfriends says, I got so much to tell y'all, but we're going to wait until we get together. We need more of that. Those women are a part of my support system, and I don't access them enough. And I recognize that. Part of my design of who I am is directly related to the people that I have surrounded myself with. And so I offer that each of us this week write down who you're spending time with. Do not judge, do not criticize yourself, but recognize that whether you are leaning on people or they are leaning on you, the people you spend the most time around are part of your support system. They are with you in those daily life crises, those daily life experiences. What does your support look like? Now, last week when we were talking about connection, we were talking about the intimacy and the vulnerability that comes in these relationships. I can say that even though these women have known me for quite some time and they've seen me in some very embarrassing moments, there are a lot of things about me that they don't know because I'm either too ashamed to say it myself, or I don't want it to disrupt the view that they may have of me. But that's also something that we need to talk about. Do y'all even know? Do we even know the real us as we get older? You know, and sometimes we think, oh, well, that's not such a big deal. I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to bring that up. I don't want the whole mood to be doom and gloom. But that's how we connect. That's how we get to know one another. That's how you get to know who's part of your support system. Because if you are going through a human experience and the people that you spend the most time with cannot relate to that human experience, then you have to ask yourself, why is that? And it doesn't mean that everyone has to be the same. It doesn't mean that everyone has to think, and operate the way that you do. But if you are not allowed to be human around other humans, then are we really experiencing true humanity? I don't know where my beat up copy of All About Love is. I really don't know where it is. It's somewhere. But one of the things that I love that Bell Hooks talks about in that book is seeing each other as human. And I can absolutely pinpoint conversations that people have or interactions that people have where one person is not seeing the full humanity of the other person. The last presidential debate would be an example of what happens when people don't see people in their full humanity. Because what in your right mind would make you say particular things, but for the fact you don't see other people as your equal? What would make you think ridiculous things? Like, if I were to say, you know, that a particular group of people who I've never met, never spent time with, didn't even visit, were doing a particular thing, it's only because I don't see them as human. There's something else. So I can talk about them all kind of ways I want. I could say, yeah, they need to die, they need to be locked up, they need to be this, I can say whatever I want because I don't see them as people, as human, as having a heart. I don't see them as having a soul. I don't see them as having a spirit. I don't see them. So of course I can talk about them any kind of way. I was having a conversation with Beloved yesterday about an interaction that neither one of us were a part of. However, it was one person using their authority over another. I'll say it that way. And the only reason people do that is because they do not see the other person as an equal. We do not see people in their full humanity, and therefore they're beneath us. So we can treat them any way we want. We can, and we don't think we're doing anything wrong. That's the part that gets me. I don't think I mistreated you because I don't see you as my equal. So I can talk to you, treat you any kind of way that suits me because I don't see you. And if you take a look at the people you spend time around, a significant amount of time around, if they are not seeing you in your full humanity, do you know what that is doing to your psyche where you may not even be consciously aware of it until you start feeling that way about yourself, or you start operating in a way that is contrary to who you are, which goes back to some of that people pleasing. It's like, I will kill myself to please you because now I'm not even seeing my own full humanity. Like, I don't deserve to be supported. I don't deserve to be talked to well. I don't deserve to be loved well. I don't deserve to be considered. When you start doing that to yourself, that's a crime. That's a crime. And so write down, put at the top of at the top of your page, put, who is my support system? What is my support system? For some people, their support system is not even human. It may be pharmaceutical. It may be alcohol. Sometimes we build support systems and then we tell ourselves, this, if I don't do this, I'm not going to be able to function. If I don't have my glass of wine after work, I'm not going to be able to function. If I don't take these pills, if I don't smoke this, whatever, then I can't be the me that I want to be. You have to take a look at that. Is that part of your design? Is that really where your power comes from? Is that what you're saying about yourself? That I can't be who I desire to be unless I partake in these things on an ongoing basis. You have to be honest. Now, if you are taking prescription medication because it is supporting some chemical imbalance or something else within your body, I'm not telling you not to take that. Please. I, who does not like to take any medication, will absolutely take it if I recognize I need it to function. I need it to be well. But we have to be honest with ourselves and look at the support systems that we have created for ourselves. That terminology, what's your distraction of choice? Because many of us have built in distractions and they have now become part of our support system. If I don't do this thing, then I won't be well. I won't be able to function. And it's now part of your support system. If I don't scroll for 2 hours on social media, my brain doesn't work right. If I don't, I like the things that are sort of like, if I don't go outside and put my feet in the grass and ground myself, that sounds more loving and supportive than some of the other things that we engage in. And it can be a communal activity. And I know that many of us think, well, I go out to drink every Friday night. That's a communal activity. Well, how is it really supporting you? Are you lying to yourself by saying, well, I go to this particular place and I drink with my friends and I do that because it makes it easier for me to get through the week? There are probably elements of that experience where that is true. The fact that you are belonging to a community. Now, the alcohol drinking and how are you getting there and how are you getting home? Are you driving drunk? All of those other things you have to be honest about. But write down, where is it that you are spending a lot of your time? What energy are you absorbing? Because one thing that I love about my girlfriends and I getting together, we may talk about the crises that are going on in our lives, but we are also talking about the things that go well. We are bigging each other up. We have one of the ladies in our girlfriend group who is in a PhD program. We can't wait to call her doctor. We can't wait to call her doctor. Isn't it just a beautiful experience to know someone so long where you remember them falling off a bike and now they are working toward their PhD? It's like, girl, I remember you were wearing blue eyeshadow when nobody told you to do that. And now look at you now. Like, to see someone's progress in life as a human is a beautiful thing. And how that inspires us. If the people that you spend the majority of your time around are not inspiring you, encouraging you, uplifting you, and loving you in healthy ways, then you have to ask yourself, what type of support system have I created or have I fallen into? Because sometimes we're not consciously creating these support systems. Sometimes they just happen. As this says, you move from city to city. Now you got to have a whole new support system. You have to find friends. We've already said here more than once, creating friendships when you're an adult. Ugh, some of us don't want to bother. It's like, I'd rather make friends with my dog, my plants, anything other than another human. You know how hard it can be to build up a relationship with someone who doesn't know your life history. Sometimes resources can lead to support system. There have been times in this space, and since, I would say 2017, when I decided to leave corporate and come more into a healing wellness entrepreneurial space, that I may have reached out for a resource and it wound up becoming part of my support system. Certainly when I went off to my spiritual life coaching journey, that was a resource. I'm coming here to receive education, to receive information. I didn't know it was going to be as transformative as it has been. And within that resource, I found a support system. So, yeah, your resources can lead to a support system. You got to be open to it. You got to be vulnerable. I wasn't always open. I wasn't always vulnerable. And there are individuals that I met in that experience where, for me, it was what it was and it didn't need to be anything else. But there were also individuals where I was like, I would really like to know this person for the rest of my life because I recognize how well we work together. We get each other. I did see a video um, of a TV show where the guy was looking for friends and he's like, but is she gonna get it? And the other person was like, well, what does that mean? It's like, get it. I just need somebody that's gonna get it. And he wasn't really able to define what it means, but you know what that means. I would like to meet people who get it. Like, I don't have to constantly explain everything. It's like you just get it. We hear with it. We vibe. You get it. You get it. Where I don't have to explain why I am the way I am. You're just like, okay, it's who you are. It's a beautiful experience to have with another human being where people aren't always looking at you sideways. Oh, why are you doing that? Why are you wearing that? Why would you say that? All of those different things mean a lot when you are developing relationships with people. Because if I got to explain who I am as I am becoming, it may not work for either one of us. Coming into community with individuals who recognize we are all works in progress. And who I am today may not be who I am tomorrow. And I like that about you. What I say today may not align with what I say tomorrow. And I allow you that freedom. The things that I am engaged in today may not be things that you engage in, but I'm learning and growing. And I'm grateful for individuals who say, who you are, I like that. I like the freedom that I see within you. I really like that. Like when I see somebody living in their freedom, it encourages me to do the same. I love to see, and this is probably something I should think about. I love to see people of a particular age doing things that people would say they shouldn't be doing. Oh, you're too old for that. Wearing their hair a particular way or dressing a particular way or engaging in activities that feel good to them. There was a woman who, she was talking about how another lady looked at her judgingly because she had a crop top on and her belly was out. And I'm like, if I get to be that age and I feel comfortable enough in my skin that I'm going to wear a crop top, there better be people applauding me at every corner. Do you know who you have to be so comfortable with your body that you don't care what other people are saying or what they think? This is my body, and I'm expressing myself in the way that feels good to me because maybe I didn't get to do it when I was in my 20s or my 30s. And so, this idea of people acting their age, you don't know what was going on for them. They may be doing things that they weren't able to do. Right. You're going to see this belly because guess what? I didn't have an opportunity to have this belly out when I wanted it to have it out. And so maybe I just want to see what it's like. And maybe I like it. So here we are. Belly's out. Y'all can't see it, but this dress, my whole entire back is out. Whole entire back. Because I always wanted to have a dress where my back was out. Because I like my back. And I know somebody would come along and be like, why is her whole back out? Because I like it and that's what I want to do. I want the sun on my back. And so I'm doing what feels good for me. And if I'm surrounded by people who are constantly trying to cover me up, keep me silent, tell me that's not a support system that I can rock with. I can't do it. Hey, my love. How are you? Oh, where'd it go? Where'd it go? There, up. It keeps moving on up. There it is. The bold and the brave. Do you know when I was going through my life coaching journey, we had to come up with not a mantra, a title. We had to come up with a title for our life's vision. And my life's vision title was Bold, Brave Beginnings. So thank you for that. This is for all the backs out. Yes, because the sun deserves to kiss my shoulders, my back, my neck, all of it. So, all of this week, it is my offer to you to look at your support system. Do you know how good it feels when you are just existing and someone you've never met before will come up to you and say, I like your energy? That has happened to me in so many different places and times, and it always takes me back. It's like I'm literally just minding my business. But what it says to me is that I am existing in the energy of who I am, and other people are supportive of it. That's right. Backs out. We should have had our backs out all summer, but it's still summer. So backs out. When you are looking at your support system, you have to ask yourself, am I able to exist within this experience just as I am? Or do I feel like I have to conform for other people's comfort? That's not support. Or if people tell you, yeah, I'll be there to support you, but don't be having this, don't be having that. Don't say this, like they come up with the conditions for their support. I don't want it. No, thank you. If I've got to conform or I have to change who I am, then this is not going to be a supportive relationship. Now, if it's a resource that I need to access because it's something that I want to further my education and wisdom and intelligence on, I might, if they say, well, if you come to this class, you need to cover your back up, or you need to dress a particular way. Okay, this is something that I'm accessing, something that I want. So I may have to conform because it's something that I want. And that's why I said resources can be temporary. They are often because we are doing something or want something new. So pay attention to when something is a resource, because one thing I do not want the word to get out that Yolanda's telling everybody to go show up at the job with their back out. If there is a dress code, if there are particular things that are required for you to get a particular resource, number one, you know it's going to be temporary. Like I'm only going to be here for a block of time and then I'm right back in these streets with my back out. It is something that is going to it's something that is going to expand my knowledge and that I want it. You know, I want this knowledge, so therefore I have to go in here with closed toed shoes, my back covered up, and my head covered, whatever. I recognize it for what it is. It's a resource and it's temporary. However, if it is part of my ongoing support system and it's telling me that anything about me is wrong, then I have to question, why am I leaning on it for support? What is it that I'm saying about myself that tells me I won't be anything without this restrictive support system that doesn't let me be who I am? Now, with that being said, I recognize that there are certain lifestyles that people live by choice that seem to be to other people restrictive. Maybe you belong to a particular religion where you have to dress a particular way, where there are particular places that you can and cannot go, and there are customs and rituals that you must participate in to be a follower of this particular religion. That's a personal choice, and it's something that no one should tell you, oh, it's horrible. It's like when individuals are on the outside of a religion, they're like, oh, see how they treat their women? This is horrible. More than likely, it's not about the religion so much as the people who have organized that particular sect of that religion. But that's a conversation for another day. But if an adult has made a choice to participate in that religion or in that organization, and they say, well, if you say I got to wear these colors, then I'm going to wear these colors. If you say I have to do these things, then I'm going to do that. That's a personal choice. And it's part of that person's support system. But tell the truth, because we have seen many individuals who have had to leave systems and organizations because it did not speak to who they were on a personal level, on an individual level. It wasn't their community. It just wasn't. There may have been things within the community that provided them particular things, but when they took a deep soul level look, they were like, this is not who I am, and this is not the way that I choose to live my life. And so, if we are talking about being our most powerful self, then we have to ask ourselves, what is my ongoing support system? Well, who does it include? How many people are there? And remember, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. How many people are really, really there for me? And for me being the me that I desire to be instead of the me that they think that I'm supposed to be. Let's say you belong to a mom group and the mom group is saying, you don't read to your kids every night before bed. Oh, you're a horrible mom. That's probably not the mom group for you. Find the mom group that supports you being exactly who you are, but also allows you to come into the fold to say, something's not going well for me and I need support to work through it. Or something amazing happened to me and I want to bring it to y'all because I know y'all are going to be just as excited about it as I am. What's your support system? You have to have one. You have to have one, because if things unfortunately fall apart, there has to be a support system that holds you up. There has to be. Get that thing out of your mind that says, I'm just so used to doing everything by myself and I'm not, no one else is going. And maybe next week, yeah, next week, we're going to talk about acceptance. And part of acceptance is recognizing when you are the one interrupting the support system because you won't let people love you. You won't let people do things for you. You won't allow people to support you because it's so foreign to who you believe yourself to be that you don't. Mm-mm. I'm one of those. When people are like, all you got to do is call, I'm like, it goes in one ear. It might run around in here for a little bit, but then it goes right out the other ear. When people are like, why didn't you call me? It's like, because I don't call people. That is something that I am unlearning, that I cannot get through this life by myself. I can't. And I shouldn't. This weekend, I had an opportunity to collect my work. My work was housed in a particular place. I no longer use that place. So I said, you know what? Let me go get my stuff. And I had gotten how to log in. And so I had to email them and said, listen, y'all got my stuff. And I would like it. And they were like, okay, fine. Here's a link. Go in. All your stuff is there. I go in and I'm like, I didn't realize I had this much stuff. Courses, worksheets, like my coaching's life's work, enough to fill 2 or 3 books. And so I had to download all of this stuff, and it took a while. And once I downloaded it, I was like, okay, now what? You got all this stuff, all of this great information. What are you going to do with it? Because if it's just stuff that you created and it's not, it's such a waste of space. It's such a waste of space. And so I'm developing what to do with all of this information, all of this goodness, all of this juiciness that I've collected. And part of that also led me to, now what's your support system that you can share this information with to see if it's good beyond my own understanding? Because just like with your babies, you birth a baby, you're like, this is the most beautiful baby ever. Other people may not think that. Or you're like, I just birthed the greatest gift to the world. Other people may not think that. Other people might be like, your child don't do nothing. But we, because we've created something, we think it's great. Doesn't mean that it's not. But if it's only great for you and only great to you, then is it even worthy of being shared? It's like when people write a book and they're like, I put that book out and nobody read it. It's like, well, was there value that you were providing? Or was it just, I think it's great, so everybody else gonna think it's great? And so I am developing a way to share this work with others for feedback, because I recognize that that is an important part of a support system. Remember when I talked about, your support system should provide a challenge when necessary? Your support system should be able to look at you and be like, now, I think I know you well enough to know that this is not your best work. That's the other thing that I loved about that high school English teacher. You would slave over a masterpiece, give it to her, turn it in, and she would give it back. And like, I'm not convinced that this is your greatest offering. I want you to do it again. And you're like, "Ah." But because we loved her so, we would do it again. So sometimes your support system will call you out and be like, you phoned this in. This is not your best work, or what I say to beloved. You got to let it bleed sometimes. In order for people to see that it's real and that it's meaningful, sometimes you got to let it bleed. And that means being vulnerable. That means going deep. And so I think it's good stuff, but I would welcome feedback um, from those who have a vested interest, not from people who just love to criticize. I always question, how do you have a job as a critic Like, what is the line between I love to criticize everyone or I'm a neutral partner and I can, really value things based upon my knowledge and experience? Oh, bless you. You know, I already thought of you. Bless you. Sometimes you share with your doula clients, how can you prepare those in your, yes. Oh, thank you for saying that. Because sometimes we got to tell people, this is what I need. Because I take my dearly departed mother, who was the backbone of my support system. But there were times when her support came in ways that just wasn't helpful. Remember earlier when I said, if you start yelling at me and pointing out all of the things that I did wrong, I shut down. My mother had a great way of asking me questions that would further me asking myself, instead of saying, you sure you want to do that? She would say things like, that's an interesting choice. Tell me why you tell me why you made that choice. And then it would make me think, like, did I do something wrong? Or, let me tell her why I made the choice. And she was like, oh, okay. But then there were those times when my mother would say things like, you have got to be out your mind. What were you thinking? And the minute someone says that to you, you get defensive, right? Now you want to defend yourself instead of listening to what their valuable criticism might be. And so, yes, sometimes you have to prepare people in your support system in how to help you by creating a boundary, by saying, listen, I don't need you to do it for me. I just need you to help me figure out how I'm going to do it. That goes along with knowing who is in your support system. Do you have people who make you feel bad for asking for support? If you do, then you might want to take a look at, well, why would you consider them part of your support system? Because again, if you got to make me feel bad in order for me to feel better, I'd rather not even ask you. Because by the time I get defensive, I can come up with 20 million reasons why you're wrong, even if you happen to be right. That goes out the window the minute I feel like I have to defend myself. So there is an art to being a part of someone's support system where you ask challenging questions that hopefully will lead them to seeing what they need to see. Now, for those of us who are coaches, that is part of what we do. And hopefully, you have received the training that allows you to do that. But if you are not a coach and you know that your ways of motivating people may also be damaging their self esteem, I would ask for you to take a look and say, maybe I need to withdraw myself from some people's support system. Because sometimes we can also say, oh, that's the way I talk to him. That's the only way that they're going to hear it. That's the only way that they're going to learn. I don't believe that to be so. I see that every day in the child care center where we have to make choices based upon the individual child of how do I relay this information to them? Because that one size for all model does not work because we're all individuals. So if I have one child that I know is sensitive to tone, then I'm going to keep the same tone for everyone. I don't like it. I don't like yelling at children. I really don't, unless it's a safety issue and I need to get everybody's attention at the same time. Does it take longer? Absolutely. But we are building adults. We're not breaking down babies. We are building, future adults who need to be able to self-regulate, who need to be able to think for themselves. And they can't do that if everything that they hear is a criticizing, judgment, yelling, putting down, and punishment. It takes a lot of patience. And the adult care that I provide takes a lot of patience. I recognize that there are particular people that I may be able to be sarcastic with and some that I can't because that's just not their way. So as you are looking at your own support system, also think, if I'm a part of somebody's support system, and you may be and you don't even know it, how do I show up? How am I interacting with them? Do I make them feel better, or do I make them feel bitter that they even asked me to begin with? And do they think that this is the way that love looks? You might be the only example of love that someone has. You better show up lovingly, because you might be the barometer, you might be the standard, you might be the bar on a day to day basis. You might be the one that defines love, support, and community for another person. How are you showing up? Because I know how I would like the people in my community to show up. And if they're showing up with all of this, they can keep on moving, because that does not work for me. Whew, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. And for many of us, we have to acknowledge that our healing process is healing from those parts of our childhood where we may have been broken. Now, I don't believe that people themselves are broken, but I believe that things can happen to you to make you feel like you may have been broken. And many of us are healing from that still, which is another reason why your support system better have some gentleness in it. Like, write down all the characteristics of what your support system needs to have. Mine needs to have a lot of patience. A lot of patience. I need my people to be patient with me. One of my children, I'm not going to say which one, is not always patient with me when I am seeking information or trying to figure something out. They this one of my children can be very, very critical. And if one of any of my children are watching, do not put their name in the chat. They don't need to be pointed out like that. But I do know that I have one child that absolutely can hurt my feelings, even if it's not her intention to do so. She she's I almost said what sign she was, but she's a fire sign. Let me just say that. She will put it bluntly, to the point, and sometimes that hurts my gentle nature. I am also a fire sign, but that doesn't mean I don't have a gentle nature. So pay attention to how you show up in other people's support systems, what your support system requires. Again, the book All About Love talked about some of the requirements for love that we forget about: the care, the affection, the discipline. Who talks about discipline when we're talking about love? Discipline better be in your love diet, or things can just run rampant. And so I am grateful to know that there are individuals in this space that I consider to be part of my support system. Different levels of intensity, because we don't talk to each other all of the time. We're not on the phone for 2 and 3 hours like I can do with my prayer partner. But I recognize, as we are becoming spiritual friends, that there is a common desire for a particular experience. Now, listen, you reverse that, and that's exactly, I wasn't going to say what she was, but reverse that. I'm the Aries and she's the other. Whew, it gets real. It gets real. So, you know what I'm talking about, Erica. You know what I'm talking about. It's like feelings. Nobody got time for feelings. We trying to get stuff done. And this is the way it's going to be. And you're like, good God, I raised this child? Yes, I raised this child. So um, I recognize that within this space, as we are becoming more and more familiar with one another and how we operate, that there are times when I know I've been supportive and when I haven't. And I saw a clip yesterday. Somebody asked Elizabeth Taylor if she could live her life all over again, what would she change? And she was like, nothing. And I was thinking that the person asked her that because she'd been married 8 times and wouldn't you want to go back and change some of that? And she was like, no. And then she changed her answer. She said, the one thing that I would change is if I ever hurt anyone, I would go back and change that because it's never my intention to cause hurt or harm. And she knows she had. If you know Elizabeth Taylor's story, you know that there was some stuff that went down that probably could have gone down a different way. Um, but I recognize that in this space, I have intended to be a support, but that hasn't always happened. I haven't responded in times when I know other people would like for me to respond. I have allowed particular relationships to just kind of die without ending, without completion, without warning. And that doesn't feel safe. And so I recognize and acknowledge that every single one of us may intend to be a safe, supportive person, but it may not always happen that way. And so as you are writing, I want you to include those times when you were asked to be support and you either were not able or it did not happen in the way that you would like it, because this is what it will do for you. Number one, it's you being accountable for the thing that you are asking, because there's nothing worse than asking for something that you are not willing to give, right? I'm asking for grace, but I don't want to give grace. I'm asking for forgiveness, but I don't want to forgive. I'm asking for, balance, but I'm, creating imbalance. And so part of the offer is for you to acknowledge and recognize the times when you were not as supportive as you would have liked to have been, or you absolutely dropped the ball. Just, because what that will do is open your eyes to what is required for you and what you may have left out. Because what I recognize in those moments where I wasn't supportive to another individual is because I didn't believe I deserved it. So I wasn't willing to give it. And so that exercise is not just for you to potentially forgive yourself, ask for forgiveness, but it's also for you to see, I didn't think that was important to me. So I didn't see the importance in someone else's life. And I might be denying myself something because sometimes we're not aware. Sometimes we think we don't deserve something because if you've been used to doing so much for yourself, look at me all crooked. If you are so used to doing everything for yourself, you may not even know what you're supposed to ask for or what you deserve. I know that's true for me. When I see other people asking for things, I'm like, we could ask for that. We could ask for that. One more experience and then we'll get into meditation. One of the things that my mother just automatically did, whether she knew to do it, whether she knew that I needed it, I'm not sure. But there were times if we were sitting next to each other where she would just take her hand and scratch my back. Oh my goodness. My mother gave the best back scratches. And it wasn't always, but it just seemed to be like she knew I needed it. I never had to ask for it. She just did it. And then once she passed away, I stopped getting it. Nobody was doing that for me. And so I just went without it. It was no longer part of the thing that made me feel grounded, that made me feel loved, that made me feel that there was someone that cared about me. And so I went without it until we we were sitting on the couch one day, beloved and I said, "Would you scratch my back?" And he went to scratch my back, and it immediately took me back to that feeling. I was like, all this time, all these relationships, I never thought to ask anyone to do what had been done for me. I just assumed because the other person was no longer there to offer it, then that was an experience I was never going to have in my life. And so for many of us, we were receiving something good, something wonderful, something loving, and for whatever reason, it stopped. And we have it in our brain that because that person or that experience no longer exists, I don't need it, or I'm not going to get it. Or God forbid, I have to ask for it and it's not given in the way that I received it. Like all of those things could be true. Add that to your list. What are the things that you used to receive that you haven't been receiving, that you long for, and yet you're not asking for? You're not placing it as a requirement of your support system. That might be some enlightening work. Yeah, that shadow work. We got to take a look at everything, not just the things that we are missing, but the things that we didn't provide, things that we stopped doing, or that we never showed up for people. I have some clients that I know that I did not show up for. Either something personal was going on, doesn't matter. If you don't communicate with people to let them know why you are absent, why you are no longer able to support, or why things have shifted, you leave them guessing. That's an experience of abandonment and neglect, and none of us want to experience that. But what can happen is either you have been abandoned or neglected in your life, so you just take it as part of the human experience. So you don't see the level of you may not see the level of importance that it has in someone else's life. You may not even know how much influence that you have in someone else's life. I have taken that for granted. And as I said earlier, it has scared me at times because I don't want to be ever accused of starting a cult. I told y'all I'm afraid of cults. And so sometimes when people express what I've meant to them or the influence that I've had on their life, it scares me. And I know for me, it's because there are still parts of me that I'm learning to love. There are still parts of me that may not believe my power and importance in this world. And so support has to be a part of. You have to define it for yourself. You have to investigate what your support system looks like. Know that it's something that goes on at all time. Like your bones in your body, it holds you up. It's part of who you are. It accepts you as you are. It can challenge you to be the greatest version of yourself. And it's a must. It is a need. It is necessary. You have to have a support system and recognize when you're part of someone else's support system. They may never come out and tell you, girl, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have made it through the week. Or maybe they do tell you in ways that may not be as obvious. I'm so glad you're here. I recognize when people say, whoo, you were gone for a day and we didn't know what to do. I recognize what that means. I'm part of somebody's support system, so I better show up. And if I don't show up, how can I prepare them for my absence? And just as I learned this week, when I'm burnt out and I don't have anything to give, then that means I'm being taken out of somebody else's support system. So I've got to do something to support myself on a day-to-day basis so that I can show up for others. So I'm not depleted. So I'm not trying to figure out how to give when I don't have anything to give. Now's a good time for us to meditate. And because there has been a lot of conversation this week about ancestors and elders transitioning, I thought that meditating on supportive spirits. How many times have we said in this space that we have a whole support team in the spirit world that we never access, we never go to, we never acknowledge? Let's take a deep breath. Let's recognize that those who have transitioned, whether we know their names or not, let's give them time to transition into power, into light, and into peace. Can you imagine that The day after you pass away, people start praying to you like, all right, um, ancestor Yolanda, I know you've only been gone for 12 hours, but this is how I need you to support me. Let's let their energy, so to speak, transition in peace. When we tell people, when we say rest in peace, let's mean that. Let's let energy rest before it's on the job. And so, for those ancestors who are surrounding us, have been supporting us, we have to acknowledge your presence. We have to acknowledge your life's work for what it was, what it is, and how it's been transformed. Let's start taking a breath. And I'm going to start moving around because I'm feeling unsupported by this chair. But I absolutely felt this morning when I opened my eyes, I felt connected to the spirit of my mother, Rosalie Sally Jameson. I felt connected to her spirit. I acknowledged her presence in my life on this side and on the other. I recognize that she is proud of me. And I would say proud of her work because she put in the work. I felt her presence because I could absolutely feel her, smell her, and I could see parts of her within me. Her smile, her daintiness, the way that I would watch her take care of herself, and the way that she taught me how to take care of myself. I was more aware of that this morning than anything. And I take that as her presence was necessary based upon me not acknowledging her presence. I truly believe my mother makes her presence known when I have forgotten, because one thing she would not allow her children to do is forget about her. She's going to let you know that she is present. And I'm grateful for that energy in my life, as I am grateful for all of the energies in my life that show up even when I do not acknowledge their presence. That energy that guides me, that questions me, that energy that pauses me to prevent something from harming me, even when I'm not aware. I am so grateful for all of the spiritual support that holds me up, that holds me down, that keeps me grounded and centered. With every breath that I take in and every breath that I take out, I acknowledge I am sharing their previous presence here on earth. Whether I know their complete names or not, whether they are part of my biological family or not, I know that there are energies that want me to win, that want me to be well, that want me to feel loved, cared for, and considered. I know that there are energies that are calling my attention to the work that they have left behind so that I can see the possibilities of my own work, so that I can carry out the work that began oh so long ago, so that I can remember that I come from a people who built community when everything else was denied, a people who leaned upon one another when they had nothing else to lean on, people who were brought into an experience that was so foreign the language, the customs, the culture, and the ground that they were forced to walk on. And yet, and still, they built community, support for one another, love for one another, and a common interest that this too shall pass, and we will create as we always have, as we always will. So when I'm crying about something being too hard, or when I'm confused about my place in the world or where I stand with another, let me not forget the spiritual support that says you better remember what you come from, who you come from, and how we are able to create from nothing. The strength that is within our bones, within ourselves, within all that we are, can be accessed with a request. Let me remember who I come from. Let me remember all that has been created by the hands, by the mind, by the willpower of those who came before me. And so, in the spirit of all things that are supporting us at all times, let us move through this week recognizing and acknowledging their presence, remembering whose we are, let us begin to end the thought, the feeling, and the behavior that says, I'm not supported, that there's no one here for me. When there is a host of spiritual entities waiting to support us, carrying us through, and one of our responsibilities is to simply acknowledge their presence so that any thought, any feeling within us, any behavior within us can decrease. Because when we recognize and acknowledge our lineage, our greatness, we walk different, we talk different, we behave differently, we choose differently. And in the spirit of those wonderful people who raised me and called me their daughter, I can't be anything other than great. It's not allowed. And I've been given more examples than I have even acknowledged. And if it is not the experience of those of us who did not witness particular strengths and support in our own families, recognize and acknowledge that you can choose your own spiritual family. What does it look like? What are the attributes? And call upon them. Because energy is not limited by biological lines. Create the spiritual family that you desire if you do not believe that it exists. What do you need? What does it look like? What does it feel like? I think that is one of the most powerful things about connecting to spiritual energy, that it exceeds the boundaries of day to day living. It's like, well, my mother and father weren't so great. My childhood wasn't so great. Okay, well, then pick another mother and father in spirit. Well, I didn't know my grandparents. Okay, then choose some other grandparents in spirit. If you don't believe that you got what you needed from the people who brought you into this existence, then There is a host of individuals, spiritual individuals, who would be more than happy to call you daughter, to call you son. And it is no disrespect to your biological parents. Perhaps they didn't have what they needed to have to create what you needed. There are energies that do. So maybe your childhood experience was not filled with courage, so you don't know what courage looks like. Well, then ask an ancestor. Call forth the energy of courage that surely exists. Surely exists. I don't believe that there is no one in your family line that did not have courage. If you believe that your childhood experience was devoid of something, there is someone in your family line that you may not know about, that you may never heard about, that you might even be embarrassed about, that has that attribute. Call them forth. Say, listen, I'm working on something that's going to require a whole lot of discipline and focus. And no one ever taught me that. No one ever taught me how to be disciplined. No one ever taught me how to focus. No one taught me how to plan. No one spoke to me and poured that into me. But I need that as part of my support system. Well, there are supportive spirits who are like, here I am, work with me. Ask the creator of your understanding. Ask for it. Say, I need this day to day. In order for me to make it day to day, I need to be connected to the energy of accountability because no one showed me that when I was younger. I don't know what that looks like. Nobody in my house was ever accountable for anything. Or maybe it's financial stability. No one in my house knew what to do with money. And so there's no one in my family that can teach me that or that taught me that. So I need someone. And I guarantee you, what will be presented to you, it might be a book that you could read about some great woman from, the 1930s that built up her own business, and maybe she becomes your role model and you look at her blueprint and what it is that she did, and she becomes the ancestor that you work with. She don't have to be your grandmom for you to work with her. They don't have to be your people for you to work with. They're your people if you connect with them on a particular level. And so I don't know the history of all of my grandparents. I only knew one of my grandparents. And I only knew her for 10 years in a particular way. I couldn't tell you much about what her life was like before she had children. I don't even know what that looks like. But I can work with her and say, Grandma Bessie, I don't know who you were before you were someone's wife and before you were somebody's mother, but please show me. Show me the characteristics of what I'm made of. There are particular things that I know about my mother, I know about my father, but there's so much that I don't know. I could go to my altar right now and like, tell me, show me. Now, does it mean that, there's going to be a one on one conversation about that particular thing? No. But I guarantee you, I know I will start to have experiences which will teach me what it is that I have asked for. And so I offer, as you are working on your support system, don't leave your spiritual support out. As a matter of fact, you might want to put them first. And the more that we learn about individuals, whether they are part of our family or not, the more that we learn, the more that we educate ourselves, you will start to see attributes of, oh my goodness, I didn't know this particular person did this. I have Cicely Tyson's autobiography, and I haven't finished it yet. But there were particular things that Miss Tyson said about her romantic relationships where I was like, my mother never had this conversation with me. So I can't go to my mama. I can't go to my altar and be like, Mom, tell me how to work through this issue. We didn't have this conversation when you were living, and you didn't provide me with an example of what that looks like. So I don't know what that looks like. However, I'm reading this book where I'm getting insight into particular things, and it's giving me, the courage to ask for those particular things in my life. And so I can ask my mama, I can ask Cicely Tyson. Like, there are so many things that we can do when we are creating a support system, but we have to, number one, believe that we deserve the support. Pry your hands off of every little thing in your life that you feel like you have to control, and be open to the fact that there is so much information available to us, available to you. We should not be out here struggling with anything. I saw my mama, Mama Ia, said with her interview with Cam Newton that we are addicted to struggling. We are addicted to suffering because we think that's the way life is supposed to be. However, the more I read how other people have lived and directed their lives, I recognize that struggle is not a part of the natural way of living, particularly when you live in a community where everyone's importance is uplifted. Nobody's struggling to eat or struggling to pay bills because everybody is supporting one another. It's a beautiful concept, but if we don't allow ourselves to live at least some of the concept, we won't experience it at all. And so, along with the feedback that I'm looking for in my work, I'm also building an online community space that this work can live in so that we can gather, we can learn from one another, we can expand on what we do here on Sunday. Because y'all see, we almost at 2 hours, and I still feel that there's more meat and potatoes that we could share. And it would afford us the opportunity to share when we can. I recognize not everybody has 2 hours of a block of time to give up all of the time. But if there is a space where we can have conversation when we're able to, when we're not dealing with the daily life to life crises, and a place where we can provide support to one another. So I'm working on that as well. As I said earlier, one of the things that you can do for yourself that is the most powerful is knowing when you have to activate that support system. I talked about our good sister Beyonce. I absolutely believe if there's a concept she has in her mind, her first thought isn't, how am I going to do this by myself? It is, who are the people I can go to that are going to create this dream and make this concept a reality? So should we all operate in that way and feel comfortable doing it. But you can't feel comfortable if you don't know who your support system is and if trust is not a part of it. And so I would offer to all of us, last week we wrote down who is in my community, who am I connected with. Now we're right now, who is in my support system? If everything fell apart, God forbid, if everything fell apart today, who would your first phone call be? Hopefully, the first conversation you have is with the God of your understanding. After that, who is the first person you're going to call to say, girl, the bottom done fell out and I don't know what to do? Or if the greatest thing that could have ever happened to you in your life happens, who's going to be the first person to hear about it? For many of us, we don't tell anybody. We just kind of, yeah, well, something great happened. Yay, me. You are so absolutely welcome. I do not think it's by accident that the conversation has been this week because we, saw two individuals who are so ingrained in Black culture that I don't even think we recognize it. Like, James Earl Jones was not just the voice, but the commanding presence in so many different films. Like, how are you a king in a cartoon and in a movie? And you know it's because he had this regality about him, this regal essence. And Frankie Beverly, I don't know the type of music y'all grew up with, but if Frankie Beverly and Maze wasn't a part of it, then I feel sorry for you. And so for those two giants to transition, I think it brings up a lot of memories for a lot of Black people. It's like, oh my God, I can't remember a party or a family reunion or something that I went to where Frankie Beverly and Maze wasn't playing. And oh my goodness, I can't remember a time when I didn't want to watch Lion King because James Earl Jones's voice, or I couldn't watch Coming to America. Like, they are so ingrained in our culture that I think we take for granted that they have left behind a legacy that we can continue to access. Sometimes we think when people pass away, that's it, but it's not. And again, if you don't believe that within your family, because some of us feel like we come from families of a bunch of fools. Like, I wouldn't go to nobody in my family with anything. Okay, well, create a spiritual family for yourself. What would it look like? What would it sound like? Who would be there? If you have an experience of growing up without a mother, growing up without a father, what would that look like? What would your spiritual mother look like? What would your spiritual father, spiritual grandmother, spiritual grandpa, like cousins? What would it look like? Dream it for yourself, create it for yourself, and believe that that connection can be made. I know I don't know last time I'm thinking about it now. When's the last time I fed my spiritual spirit team? I don't know, but I better do it today now that it's in the forefront of my mind. And I hope that you engage in whatever ritual feels good for you when it comes to communing with the ancestors. If there are particular things that you want to know more about when it comes to doing those types of things, there's my email address. Email me and tell me what that looks like for you. You know, some of us, if we haven't participated in an activity, we don't know where to start. We don't know what's appropriate. There are some publications that I can recommend for you. And then I can just kind of tell you what I do. Anytime you see me looking to the right, I'm looking at my altar. I have pictures of my loved ones um, on the altar, around my altar. There are living things there. Um, there is water there. The dreams and the hopes that I have for myself and for other people, I've placed there. There is a dream that has been on this altar for a whole year for someone else. And so when I go to the altar, I touch and agree with that. And I want my ancestors supporting that person. They don't even know them, but I know them and I know that it was a desire of theirs. So, like I said, there are particular things that I do. So if you need assistance with that, just let me know. I'm gonna let y'all go because it's still summer. My back is out. It's 82 degrees, and I'm gonna let the sun kiss my shoulders, kiss my back, kiss my neck, kiss my bald head, and all of that. Thank you. Have a most blessed week. Don't forget throughout the week, take a look at your support system. What is there? What is not there? And next week, when we talk about acceptance, we're going to talk about how this all works as an action plan. All right. I love y'all. Have an incredible rest of your Sunday, a rest of your week, and we'll be back here next Sunday. Good.